Boys, I am here to do one thing and one thing only today, and that is to decide which Pokemon game is the very best. I think that's pretty simple. We're going to have 5 different criterias that are pretty broad. So, well, I guess I'll just go ahead and combine these two. Overall design slash character, map, and Pokemon design. That is a very big one. Not necessarily the style, because each one has a different style each generation, but more so, how do they do are they intriguing character designs? More so that is the map unique and interesting. Are the Pokemon cool? Which, granted, can be pretty subjective. But this is the definitive tier list for Pokemon games. I'm definitely not being sarcastic. Next, story. Story is very important. Not really in Pokemon. It doesn't have to be an in-depth story, but, something there to continue to bring the player along a little bit besides, hey, let me go get funny badges and go be funny champion. Enjoyment overall. Really just, are the games enjoyable to play? Are they fun? Are there really fun little games in them too? Mini games, stuff like that? Are they just overall fun games? And finally, what did they do to enhance the series or change the formula? That's very important as you get later into the generations. But I figured I'd make it its own category because obviously there's not much of a formula to change the first few generations. Let's get started. We're gonna go in order of release, except for the games I haven't played. I've played Coliseum, but I haven't played it in years, so I'm not gonna rank it. Same with XD. I haven't played any of those games in years. Probably almost a decade, actually, for Coliseum. So let's get started. This tier list groups some of them together, so, I'll talk about the unique perks a little bit. Red and Blue, the OGs, man. Now listen, these games have a lot of issues, but for the time, you gotta think about that. Pretty fun. I mean, they're the OG games. They're what helped it blow up alongside the anime, stuff like that. So, you gotta give them their respect. I'm gonna put the OGs in a solid, I'm thinking high B or low A. We're gonna decide on the GOAT and the worst games at the end. So I'm thinking I'll put it in B for now. Because they're the OGs, they have good characters, stuff like that. You got Surge, the big muscle military man. You got the psychic Sabrina. You got the old man Blaine who has the key to a tower or puts the key to his gym in a tower that's burned down. Little, great characters. Giovanni, one of probably the best villain boss. I'm not gonna lie, he's up there anyway, just because he's actually a villain. That just makes sense. He just runs a crime syndicate. It's got some good characters. Gary's still probably one of the best rivals, or Blue, whatever you want to call him. Yellow is just Red and Blue, but a little bit better, mostly. You get the chance to have all the starters. Charizard can learn Fly, which was a big issue with Red and Blue. And it's just a slightly better version, so I just gotta put it in front of it. You get to start with a Pikachu, which is different, That didn't happen again until the Let's Go games, where it was not a Fire, Water, Grass starter in the main lines, so fair enough. I think it's a good spot for it. Gold and Silver are good. They build upon and fix a lot of the issues of Gen 1, technically. In terms of actual technical behind-the-scenes stuff, gameplay, stuff like that. So, I gotta put it in, a low B, high C here, maybe. I'm not gonna oversell it. It was 2 regions, which was really cool, having Kanto as the post-game. I feel like they could do a lot more with it, though, and that was the biggest issue. There really isn't much there besides fight the gyms, then fight Red. To me, the legends actually being somewhat incorporated into the story was pretty cool, because they weren't in the original. I think I'll put it above Red and Blue, but below Yellow for now. That seems good for now. This will probably change at the end. Crystal, above Yellow. Crystal is just a better version. My opinion, anyway. I don't know if I assume that's the general consensus. But in my opinion, I like Crystal more over Gold and Silver. So let me put that back. It was just a comparison thing. So I think it'll be high B right now. Maybe low A. I'm leaving it in B for now. Ruby and Sapphire, I feel like are the first biggest leap mechanically. Move to the Game Boy Advance. I don't really talk characters for Johto, but that's just because the gym leaders are cool, but there isn't a lot of characters besides Lance and the Rocket admins that are that interesting. I'm not gonna lie, at least to me personally. But Ruby and Sapphire, I'll probably put here for now. I feel like B is gonna change a lot at the end. Ruby and Sapphire were a huge step up. There was 2 evil teams, so it made each version more unique, because you would fight the opposite team, which was interesting. Although Magma's base and Ruby Sapphire made no sense, but that's fine. They fixed that in Emerald, which we'll get to in a bit. You had Kyogre and Groudon, who are huge parts of the story, even more than Lugia and Ho-Oh were, which I think was cool for the time. And then they overdid it by doing it every generation. But I think it was interesting for Hoenn. Hoenn's one of my personal favorite regions. It was the generation I started playing with as well. But, you know, not incorporating that. I think it has one of the better, maybe the best, but I will just say better for now, legendary trios. They're all designed great. I like a lot of the Hoenn designs. Steven's a cool champion. Wallace, not so much, but we'll get to that with Emerald. There isn't a lot of post-game, really. So, I guess there's not a lot of post-game for a lot of the games, but it's something to keep in mind. I think double battles were really cool. I like the secret bases. That was a fun mechanic to add. You got to take those into account. I think this is probably the first rival that doesn't feel like a rival because it's just like a friend. And I feel like that can work, but for me personally, I like when the rival's kind of like a dick, and it motivates me more to kick his ass every Pokemon battle, instead of, "Aw, man, you beat me, dang." And it also, it just works better for me, where they get angry and want to do better as well. I don't know, that type of rival works better for me, but they don't do that anymore. I think it's also, thinking about it, Kanto did it a good bit. Johto, kind of. There's a lot of areas you trek back to and find new things, and also some areas where you don't even have to go to Pacifilog Town for the main story, which I think is very interesting because it could just be a secret if you don't know about it, and I think that's really fun. Areas that are completely optional, or if you go back, you'll find things like the abandoned ship. I think it's cool. Fire Red and Leaf Green are literally just red and blue, but better. Basically, there's like very few changes besides, you know, updating the mechanics and graphics and stuff. So honestly, I'll probably put it in A, maybe high B. I'll put it in A for now. It's like a low A, maybe middle, and like middle of A, because Fire Red and Leaf Green were part of the generation I started with. But there's no bias here at all. But also, it's bringing in Gen 1 and at a time when it wasn't overused. You got to have updated versions of the game. You got to have updated versions of all the characters and new graphics with new Pokemon, at least in the post-game. The Sevi Islands were added. There's an actual post-game there. There's like the story of Lorelei and stuff like that in the post-game. And there's just overall, it's a good upgrade on the originals. Emerald is definitely up there in A, definitely, because it just takes Ruby and Sapphire and makes it better. You're going to hear that a couple times throughout this list, I feel like, for third edition games. Emerald just took what was good there and made it better. It fixed the Magma thing. You fought both teams. You fight, I think, Magma more, or at least the leader one more time than over Archie. But they fixed their base. They have both the legends incorporated more. Rayquaza shows up before the post game, and Wallace is a champion when Steven either never was or lost, or never really explained fully. I think Wallace is not as good of a champion. I like Juan replacing him. I like Juan as the new 8th gym leader. He was fun. But I feel like Wallace was a weaker champion because it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Because Steven's still there for most of the game. I feel like it works better when the champion's actively involved in your adventure, you know, like your story and stuff. But that's just me. That's one thing I'd take away from Emerald. I feel like it was just to change up the form. Diamond and Pearl. We're gonna put you, I feel like it has to be like a C or D. Diamond and Pearl were not great games. Like, they weren't awful. It was an upgrade, like, mechanically from Gen 4, for the most part. The game was really slow, and I gained XP slower. But in terms of just variety of Pokemon and, like, designs, well, I mean, the designs weren't all awful, obviously. I really like all the Gen 4 starters and a lot of Gen 4 Pokemon. It had good Pokemon, but the depth of the roster of available Pokemon was awful. The Elite Four Fire type dude only has 2 Fire types, and there's only 2 Fire types available. And then they brought that back in the remakes instead of adding the Platinum decks for free post game. That's terrible considering how useful Fire types can be, especially in Gen 4. So I can't put it any higher than a C just for that alone. It has probably the least memorable professor for me, besides maybe Elma as well. But that's just for me because I didn't really care for Rowan. That's just me. I think it has a lot of cool legendaries. It's the first one with like a ton of legendaries just to catch. You got the Lake Spirits. You got obviously the Boxart trio. It starts to get there. It starts to. I think it has the most legendaries up to this point. So it's not. They weren't bad games, but Platinum did it better. Who would have thought? The dimension, if it will go in top of A. Dimensional world with guillotine and stuff is really cool. Obviously, I feel like it does a lot more for Cyrus, and obviously adds a lot more Pokemon, a lot more fire types. And overall, it's just a better version of Diamond Pearl. Much better version. If you're going to play Gen 4, even, well, I'm just going to say it now, it kind of spoils the remakes. Platinum is still the best version of Gen 4. The best version of Sinnoh. So play Platinum if you're going to play a Sinnoh game. Oh, both the rivals, well, really, there's only one rival, Barry. And he kind of sucks more than May. But, you know, that's in all the games. All the Gen 4 games. Heart Gold, Soul Silver are one of my favorite personal games, and also are how you do a remake right, or best, I guess, because Fire Red and Leaf Green are fine remake, but this is how you do it best. You take the base game, you make it 10 times better, you put your heart and soul and love into it, unlike these ones, but we'll get to that. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are probably some of my favorite Pokemon games personally, but even personal bias aside, I feel like they're some of the most critically acclaimed games. Johto is still, I mean, the leveling is still kind of awful for having 2 regions because the Elite Four is like level 40s, but, and like some of the other quirks of Gen 2 are still there. That you add the battle sort of place from Gen 4, you add that. For post game, you have the other legendary you can catch, the roaming dogs, obviously, which is always a lot of fun to try to get. Suicune story with Eugene or whatever his name is. Everything just looks really good for Gen 4 for DS graphics. It's just really nice. I'm not gonna lie, following Pokemon from their debut and probably the best iteration of following Pokemon. They just added a lot to the game, the Gen 2, and it just made it. There's just so many little things that make it great. Black and White, Gen 5 is probably the games I've played the least. Not gonna lie, I don't hate them. I think Black and White, and like by extension, Black 2 and White 2. Gen 5 probably has the most in-depth and best story, which helps it a lot. I don't think I can put it lower than like a low A, high B area. I think I'll put it here for now. This seems like a good spot. Graphically, it's probably also one of the ones that you either love or hate. I've used to like not be a big fan, but I kind of like the roaming sprites more than the 3D ones in a lot of cases. I think it can be a lot of good animation there. Good movement stuff. There's a ton of legendaries. Like, this is where they start to go crazy with legendaries. Zekrom is a really cool. Reshiram, they're both really cool legendaries. Good box art. At this point, you know, this is where they're really incorporating the legends, was Gen 4 and 5 into the story. I think this was the peak of that. And it's still kind of working, obviously. Kyurem, we'll get to him a bit more in Black 2 and White 2, but he's cool. May as well get that out of the way. N is one of the cooler sort of characters. The team is probably one of the best. The best. Getsus is cool. Just the story is the best. Like, this is best Pokemon story. Not gonna lie, most in depth as well. We'll get more to rivals in Black 2 and White 2, but the rivals in this one were cool too. I like that they go on to do other things. I like that we actually got a sequel set of games, which we'll get to now. Black 2 and White 2. I'm gonna put probably somewhere in here. I'll leave them in front of Black and White for now, but this one could change. They can move up probably. I don't know. I really love Gen 3, but I might have to move it past Emerald. I'll think about it. But Black 2 and White 2, first ever actual sequel games to a previous entry, basically. I mean, technically Gen 2 is, but like this one follows the same. Follows the events more, and Gen 2 is more so technically a sequel, but it really has, besides Rocket, besides their motivation, really has nothing to do with the second. Them and Red is the final boss, is really all the connections that storyline wise. So besides that, true sequel games, it goes back to being like more of a dickhead rival, which works better for me. The starters of Gen 5 are probably some of my least favorite. Tepig himself is fine. His evolutions are ass. I'm not a fan of the Samurott line, personally. That's just me. I like Snivy's line. The Survivor is probably my favorite of the final evolutions. So, you know, I haven't really talked about starters for the rest, but that's because there's always at least 2 good-looking ones. And then Chikorita exists for Gen 2. We don't gotta talk about Chikorita. So, Gen 5, Black 2 and White 2 just carries on the good story, you know, in-depth story of Black and White. Everyone's still there. I like that it's a sequel that makes it unique. We're really getting to that change the formula instead of just enhance the series. Changing the formula while also enhancing the series type of time. Gen 5 does that overall, but Black 2 White 2 really does. Being a sequel and building on what Black and White did more than normal. X and Y can't go above a D. I love the region. I haven't hated any of these regions, so I haven't really brought it up. But we might, you know, get there in a bit. But I really like, you know, Gen 6. I really want it to be better, but it's not. I love Mega Evolution as a concept. It's the best concept gimmick thing, spoiler, I guess a little bit, that they've done since introducing it. I really love the designs for it. It felt like there was a lot of love in X and Y, but they didn't get the time they needed to do things like the obvious Zygarde storyline. Team Flare is kind of boring as hell. This is where we start to get into really bad evil teams that aren't really interesting at all. The group of rivals, I feel like they could use a lot more development. Because Tierno, the fat dude, likes dancing. Then you have the smart midget. That's about all you really get out of them. The what's-her-face, that likes dragons, Shauna or something like that. I don't even remember her name. And Serena or Callum, I think was the male's name. I always played a male, so I don't ever remember. Were kind of just there. They were just kind of the average rivals. So, you know, I really honestly think the only good starter in a Final Evolution was Greninja as well, like design-wise. I like that you get to pick 2 starters. It's interesting, even though it's a Kanto starter for the second one. And of course they have a Mega Evolution. There's some good stuff done in X and Y, but it just is an unfinished game. It just is. Story-wise, and just overall is felt very unfinished. And like, it could have used another year or 2. This is the one time I was shocked we didn't get like a Pokemon Z. But moving on to the other half of Gen 6, the Gen 3 remakes, and I really enjoyed them. I don't think I can put them in A. Maybe the bottom of A, though, around like here. Because there are a lot of issues. The Battle Frontier wasn't there, even though it really should have been. The Delta episode was cool, short but cool. I liked the Zinnia as a character. I liked that they actually added something to the post-game. I liked the Deoxys part. I liked the origin forms, Mega Rayquaza, who's literally banned from Ubers. How good he is. The Mega starters are really all like really cool and unique. I love that Sceptile becomes a Dragon type. It made me actually choose Sceptile for once in my life over Swampert or Blaziken. So there's that. A lot of them, it helped a lot of Gen 3 Pokemon like Absol, you know. Mega Absol was cool. Mega Gallade was cool to see with Wally. Wally actually having a Gallade made sense. I think Wally in the remakes is a lot better of a rival. He's not the snarky dickhead rival, but he's also not the like weak rival. He starts off that way and becomes more like a strong actual, like somebody I could actually see pushing me to do better by the end. I just wish you could have a few more interactions with him. I wish they added a few more than what was in the original Gen 3. May or Brendan seems more like a love interest in the remakes to me. Or like the closest of close friends, if you don't want to call him a love interest, I guess. It seems like they really alluded to that more in this one, especially with that after like in like mid-credit scene, like battle. Really felt that way. There's a lot going for these, but also not, because no Battle Frontier. There's a lot of like missing parts in the post game, and also just there's a couple things like there's bits of laziness, I guess is the way to describe it. But there's also a lot of good things as well. I just can't put it higher than most of these other entries in A. Sun and Moon, I feel like... Okay, I'm gonna rank both of these at once. Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. These aren't their final placements, I just put them in the middle. So Sun and Moon was fun. I love the island setup. I like the change up from the gym format. I like that we're the first champion that's different. Hasn't been done yet to that point. That's cool. It's like a Lola's sort of catching up in sort of professional like Pokemon leagues and stuff like that, like being in that sort of circuit thing, you know, that sport. I want to call that for lack of a better term. I like the Solgaleo, Lunala. They're good design legends. I like that there's like a pre-evolution to them that's different, even if Nebby or what like that thing is not my favorite because of the story. Lily is an awful character, and I hate her with every fiber of my being. Hal gets better in the second one, but we're on Sun and Moon right now. He's not that great of a rival in here. He's just kind of there. He just kind of exists. He doesn't really have an arc. Gladion, or whatever his name is a much better rival, and he's okay. The Aether Foundation is kind of cool. I like that there's like technically like 2 evil teams. There's like an evil organization, like an evil team. I like Guzma and his admins. This is probably the last like team I kind of enjoyed. I like that they just took over like a rundown town. That's cool. I like the trials and stuff like that. And that all started in Sun and Moon, so it gets the perks of that. I think I'll leave it in B. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I have to move down to C. I feel like Diamond and Pearl were very much not great. Platinum did things just 10 times better. But Ultra Sun and Moon added more, like Ultra Beast added more focus on that. It added an area that is literally has nothing to it, but you know it exists. There's the Necrozma and Ultra Necrozma, or Necrozma, however you want to say it, fight that a lot of people get annoyed at, but I think is hilarious. That it's just a level 60 legendary you have to get through to fight some level like mid 50 Elite Fours. I think that's hilarious. How gets a better arc here. Using Ultra Necrozma is busted. Z moves, I didn't cover Z moves. I think they're not as good as Mega Evolution and very unbalanced. That didn't really get fixed here. The like way you get to the different Ultra dimensions or whatever they're called, or just different dimensions to fight Ultra Beast, it's boring really quick. It's very boring. There's so many tutorials. This is the first generation where like they hold your hand far too much. I didn't mention that with Sun and Moon. That also might bring Sun and Moon down. It is actually going to. But Ultra Sun and Moon is worse, so then I have to move it down to D, because it is just pain. I feel like half my runtime in Ultra Sun and Moon was just going through tutorials. I think I also forgot to say, I really like like people can challenge you for your spot as champion. I think it's weird you have to go through the Elite Four just to defend your title. I wish they like made that optional or something just to defend your title. Like they could notify you somebody's competing against the Elite Four, then you go challenge, you go defend against them. I like that they swapped out Kui or whatever at the end for how that makes a lot more sense. Rivals fighting to crown the first champion than just the professor. I think that makes a lot more sense. I do like that there's like technically two professors, like Kui's like wife or whatever. I don't remember. That's another thing. I don't really remember a lot of the minus like the Aether Foundation stuff. I don't remember a lot of the Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Moon story. Really, it's not that memorable. And the Rainbow like Rocket post game was something, but I feel like they relied on this. It was just a nostalgia trip, and like they missed Gen 2 representation. You gotta love my Gen 2. Bring back the Rocket admins. But really, I mean, it was fine, but it's just a bunch of battles over and over and over, so it can't be anything like, it can't be great post-game. And overall, I think that brings it lower than Sun and Moon, for me personally. The Let's Go games are interesting, because I don't own them. I've played them, I don't own them. And I feel like they really shouldn't even be counted. They really should have just been a spin-off game, because of the way they are. It has like the Go mechanic of how you catch things. You only get XP from catching Pokemon. Not really. You don't really get XP from, I don't think you get XP, it was from like defeating wild Pokemon or whatever. You don't need to defeat wild Pokemon, it's fighting trainers and catching Pokemon. That's all they gave you XP for your team, so it was annoying in that sense. I like the graphics. Graphically, I think it's my favorite Pokemon game. I like the riding Pokemon, like the following Pokemon, and some of them you can actually ride, or like some will teleport behind you, or like be in front of you. I like the time they put into that. I feel like there was a lot of time put in these games, but they just feel they act and play like spin-offs. And it's also Kanto again, so there is that. That honestly takes it down a little bit of a notch. But honestly, I think they're fine. Probably B. Like, for what they are, if you treat them as a spin-off going in, don't expect like a mainline experience. Like, you expect a lot more, like, can't be fun, really. And obviously catered more towards a younger audience and like the Pokemon Go audience. You'll have a fun time. Like, graphically, it's fun as well. Battles are fine. Yeah, it's a solid low B, probably. Yeah, I think it's fine. I will move Diamond and Pearl back up. I feel kind of bad for putting them that low. Sword and Shield. Oh, Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield. These are my personal least favorite games, and I'm going to explain why. We'll get through the positives first, because there are. The wild area premise is cool. I like that they had an event early on where you could just get a ton of shiny Magikarps, and like they should have done more events with that. That's cool. I like the gym challenge idea and premise. It's cool. I like that it's like more formal than just, hey, just go fight the gyms and fight the Elite Four and champion. More like you sign up, you get sponsored by like a notable trainer or person, you fight your way through, and you see other people doing the gym challenge as well, and then they have like a tournament and stuff at the end. That's cool. I like the premise. There's some good premises, but failed execution in Gen 8. That pretty much sums up a lot of Gen 8 here before we get to the rest of it. The other thing with it, I do like all the starters. I feel like this, like, to a certain extent. I like the grass line and Cinderace line a lot. Rillaboom, that's the grass one. Sobble's line went in a direction I didn't expect, and it's probably my least favorite. I don't think it's bad necessarily, but it's my least favorite. Dynamaxing is the most boring mechanic they've done yet. Gigantamaxing at least changes the design, so it's more interesting. But just the concept in general is just boring to me. It's just make Pokemon big, have big move, and that's about it. You do it for 3 turns. You can only do it in certain areas, which is pretty much mostly just the gym battles in the end, and like the tournaments at the end for the most part. Like, whatever. Story-wise, it's probably the worst game. Worse than Gen 1, which barely had a story. Like, the twist villain didn't work at all. You could call it immediately. There really isn't a plot. It's just the darkest day, occasionally. This game holds your hand the entire game, and that automatically took it down a letter grade before I even thought about anything else. Like, even children don't need this much hand-holding. Like, a 5-year-old could play this game, or could play any Pokemon game and probably be okay. Maybe not Gen 5. Gen 5's kind of out there. But the rest of them, they could play and be just fine. They'll figure it out. You don't need hand-holding through the entire game. Like, at least with Gen 7, most of the hand-holding tutorials were, like, within the first 2 hours, mostly. Minus a few for, like, new mechanics and stuff. This is just the entire game. They hold your hand. They tell you, go here, go this, talk to this person. Go this way. You can't go any other way. You can't explore. Nope, not allowed. Also, Galar is just a straight line. It is the worst region they've designed. It's the most lazy region they've designed. And it's just not good. Every house is like the exact same with the same furniture. Like, most of the town designs feel kind of like okay. Like, most of the town designs are cool. Like the one in the mushroom, like dark area, wooded area, whatever it's called. I don't even remember. Stowan Side Town. That one is kind of cool. It's got like a market, like hilly sort of terrain side thing. It's got like the Diglett Temple right next to it. That one's fun. Most of the town like gimmicks, like designs are kind of cool. The gym gimmicks are pretty fun. Some of them not so much. For Raihan's gym, they got very bored, clearly, and lazy. Just said, hey, double battles, which makes the gym battle itself interesting. But considering that's the whole challenge, when there's actually some interesting ones throughout the game, it's kind of annoying, you know. Character designs are pretty good. I like most of the designs of the characters, except Leon in his soccer shorts while wearing tights as well. It looks stupid. Hop. Sorry, I almost called him How because they just copied and pasted animations. Is probably the worst rival in the entire franchise. Like, people keep telling him he's good, and then I squash him in 2 seconds. And he's like, oh, well, maybe next time. Oh, well, maybe next time. Oh, maybe next time. And he never gets better, and I destroy him quicker and quicker as the game progresses. He is not a rival. He is my bitch. The other, Beady or Bede, however you say his name, was a better rival. I feel like it's the weakest rendition of the dickhead rival, but still a fine rival. He gets a little redemption arc, as they all do. That's fine. He becomes a gym leader or whatever. Most of the gym leaders, like I said, were cool, design-wise and stuff like that. Team Yell is probably the least interesting evil team by their nature of not really being the evil team. They just kind of do things. They're kind of just like, they make fun of like stands or like paparazzi a little bit, and also like stands. I wanted to say K-pop stands specifically, but like stands in general, online stands, because they just do stupid shit and just for a person and like devote their life to it. Pretty sad, honestly. I really like their town though, just because it's kind of run down. I like that idea, and I like that gym specifically because you can't Dynamax. That makes it interesting and unique. You can't Dynamax at that gym because they don't have the funding to afford a stadium, which I think is kind of sad, but also really funny. But like overall, it's just not a good Pokemon. It's not a good experience for anyone with like more than 2 IQ. The DLC were okay. I guess I'll factor those in. I should. The DLC were okay, and I hate the idea of $30 DLC. Well, okay, this is the most scummy Pokemon game, so I also have to factor that in. Well, we gotta at least gotta talk about it, even if it's not gonna factor into the ranking, because it can't get any lower anyway. $60 for both games. Nintendo Switch Online subscription if you want to do any online features. Then Pokemon Home and Bank if you want to bring any Pokemon from like your 3DS or anything over to this, which both cost home is like what, $15 a month or something like that. Bank was like 10 a year or like 15 a year if I remember correctly. And of course these are Pokemon games that like doubled in price because it's the start of Let's Go actually, the Switch games. I think they can justify $60. They really can't. They haven't yet anyway. The Switch Online subscription, which is like $20 a year, and that's if you don't get the family plan or whatever. And then $30 for both DLCs. If you buy one season pass, it's only for the game that you bought it for, just Sword or just Shield. Then you got to pay another $30. So you're basically paying in their mind for 3 Pokemon games for the DLCs, even if it's the exact same DLC with both games. And I'm going to be honest. Neither of them are worth $15, which is what they should be for 2 DLCs for the Season Pass. Especially the Isle of Armor, you can complete it in like 45 minutes. Maybe the second one, it's a bit better, it's a bit longer, there's a bunch of legendary and stuff like that. Snowy, whatever. But, definitely not Isle of Armor. Definitely being hard carried by the second DLC in that $30 price point. So, that's just opinion. I mean, it's cool, but I thought the idea was more so that would change the formula up. That was the way to replace like the third game and it'd be cheaper, even though it's not, because they raised the price of Pokemon games when porting to the Switch. But now they also are continuing the 2 games every generation, which is also a scummy thing at this point. Just to get more money, to be honest. But we all know that. That's why I didn't really factor it into any of the like post like Gen 4, Gen 5 rankings when they really should have stopped that. But that's just Sword and Shield for you. That game, it'll be remembered as a bad time. Actually, no, probably not, because the games probably will just keep getting worse. Maybe not, though. We'll talk about the ones that Scarlet and Violet, even though I'm not going to rank it, because obviously it's not out yet. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl can't go any higher than like a low C, high D for me. And that might be a bit more controversial, but my experience with these games, they were absolute, just boring and not good. Not what I was expecting. I know there's going to be at least one motherfucker by the name of Harpo Gaming that's going to be in my goddamn DMs after watching this. And that's fine. But I'm going to explain. So I played it day 1. I didn't pre-order, but I bought it day 1. I waited for the day 1 reviews. I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe it was day 2 actually. It might have been day 2. I don't remember. Day 1 or day 2. I bought the game. Played it. And it was okay. There's no intro because they hadn't added the intro to the game. There just wasn't an intro. There was only like 2 soundtracks. And even after they actually added the rest of the soundtrack, I only heard like 3 different music tracks the entire game. I shit you not. Every single battle had the same track. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't know if that was just my game being buggy. I honestly don't know. Except for the Elite Four. They're the only ones who had unique ones. So, that was great. Hearing the same thing over and over. And then like there was like 3, maybe 4 different like route tracks that I heard the entire time, which was just great. It has the Diamond and Pearl decks, which automatically lowers it down a bit because it's once again back to being very limited. I had to use a Rapidash because I chose Turtwig as my starter, or else I just wouldn't have a fire type unless I went to the Underground, I guess. The Underground's cool. I forgot to mention that with the regular Gen 4, which had the Underground like secret bases. The Grand Underground's cool. I hate that they replaced secret bases just with statues. I wish you could do both, or just like put statues up or do a secret base. Although I feel like no one would then put statues up. The secret bases are just cooler. I like that they brought those back for Gen 6, the Gen 3 remakes, by the way. I forgot to mention that earlier. That was fun. I didn't feel like it needed to be mentioned, but I may as well since I brought it up here. And overall, I feel like the game, this is strictly a decision by Oka, probably. The game is just the easiest Pokemon game to date, and that's because of one thing. Not the fact that we had the XP share like all, although that has made every game easier since it was introduced, but because they didn't take it into account for every trainer except the Elite Four. That is why there's such a huge power scaling issue, or like level scaling, whatever you want to call it, for the Elite Four, and why it goes up so much, because they didn't change any other trainer in the game from Diamond and Pearl. Learned that, and it made a whole lot of sense, because I clean swept the entire game. I think I had one Pokemon faint the entire game up to the Elite Four. Maybe, and it was during a gym battle when it was a crit. That was it. I think the only gym I had a little bit of trouble with where that happened was the fighting gym, and that's just because my team did not account really for fighting types very well. Besides, like, my flying type, which once my flying type was the one that died, I struggled a bit. That is the only time I struggled in that entire game up to the Elite Four and Champion. And then I'm willing to admit, Cynthia kicked my ass once. I lost once. I'll put that out there. I got fucking destroyed by, I think, Gardevoir was the one that kicked my ass. I'll put that out there. And then I clean swept and destroyed Cynthia the second time. So there's that. But, you know, I guess we gotta have a tiebreaker at some point if I ever get around to playing the gym or the Elite Four rematches, which probably not. I haven't touched the game in like 3 months. So there's that. But also the legendary scene is just kind of boring. I didn't even bring it up with Gen 8 because I feel like I was ragging on Gen 8 too much, but the Eternatus scene is just pathetic as fuck. Like, he's just kind of there when you get introduced to him, and then he's just sitting there, and then he does the, like, portal part, like, where the Super Eternatus or whatever. That was kind of interesting, but the introduction just ruined that for me. And the post-game's also ass. I feel like I ragged on Gen 8 too much, so I just kind of left those out, but that also takes into account. But then, yeah, honestly, yeah, I'm bringing it down the deep. Just play Platinum. You're gonna play a Sinnoh game. And that leaves us with... Oh, I'm not gonna rank you because you're not out yet. Legends Arceus. I also haven't played it. Part of me just was concerned because it was announced the same time as the remakes, and it was coming out so quickly that I feel like part of me kind of expected it to be not worth $60. And from what it sounds like, it really wasn't. It was short. It wasn't bad. From everyone that I've watched play it, and everyone that I've talked to, it wasn't bad per se, but it was short and definitely not worth $60. It was not worth the price point. So, you know, there's that. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. That's all I'll really say about it. And then Scarlet and Violet, I'm cautiously optimistic on. That's all I can really say about those two. So that's my ranking. Now you have to decide on the GOAT and the worst. And I think you know my worst. One of these two will decide at the end, and then for GOAT, I feel like it could be literally any of these top 4. So I'm not gonna move them all because that's a lot of work. We'll decide on the worst first, which is between both the Gen 8 games, the Gen 8 main like new titles, and then the remakes. And I feel like I'm leaning towards Sword and Shield because at least with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the region's interesting. It doesn't hold your hand the entire game. There's areas, because it's a remake of a better time and a better generation, that are just completely up to you to explore, and I've always loved that. The Safari Zone makes a comeback. I hate the chibi style, but I'm not gonna, like I said, art style, I'm not gonna factor against the game. I would have preferred Sword and Shield art style for the remakes, but whatever. They took out gambling. That should be... You don't take out my Pokemon gambling, damn it. And, but I feel like that's not enough to make it the worst. I feel like that's good. I can't wait for somebody to say it's recency bias, except the opposite. You just hate recent games. When I complimented Let's Go a fuck ton. And I'm cautiously optimistic in thinking Scarlet and Violet will be good Pokemon games. Even though they're Crystal thing, like, gimmick I'm not a big fan of, but that's just me personally. It feels generic and not, like, feels boring in a way, but that's different. So as for the GOAT, I feel like I can factor out Black and White too, because it has the best story, but I feel like being a sequel is a double-edged sword, because it means it carries on the best story and has a lot of great things. Then again, it has the Pokemon World Tournament, which is just huge. You can fight literally every, like, mainline trainer from every, like, gym leader and champion from every region. I'm torn between Black and White 2, actually, and Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Which makes me also want to drag this up to here. I'm torn between these two as the GOAT. Platinum and Emerald are really good Pokemon games. But these two, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, kind of as one game, and Black 2 and White 2 count as one game, just for the ranking. They're both the best, like, the peaks of Pokemon. I feel like Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the peak of the remakes, for me, and Black and White 2 is the peak of, like, story, and, like, overall, just how much there is to do. And I love, there's nothing wrong with more content, but they both have a lot of content. I feel like I gotta go for just the World Tournament's existence. They did pull the switch up on the champion, which kind of, for Iris, which is kind of random and weird. It takes away from it, I feel like. But I feel like I gotta go with black 2 and white 2. I'll confirm it once I drop Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I feel like I gotta. And that's gonna give me a horrible game in my DMs even more. Being angry, but it's just art style even aside, because I know it's probably one of the more like diversive ones, I guess. Diversive, however the fuck you say that. It's just story's the best. A lot of good Pokemon designs, a lot of legendaries for you to catch, which all have fun designs. The rival is a rival I'm a fan of, like the dickhead rivals. I like that it shows being a sequel, it takes that into account and like changes things up, adds a new part of the region, you start somewhere else, and like the previous rivals actually go on to be important like characters. One's like a researcher or whatever, one's a gym leader. That's really cool. It has some of the best characters throughout the series. I feel like I can make an argument for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but that's about it for like the GOAT of Pokemon games. The rest of these are really good, but are like personal favorites for this last one, probably. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. It's going to be fun to cut down almost an hour of footage. Subscribe to Joe Plays, and let me know if you want me to do more tier lists. This one I just wanted to do because I thought it'd be a lot of fun. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.